Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Welcome to another review from Fanboys Forever. And although lately it seems like almost all of my content is geared towards Masters of the Universe, keep in mind I still love to review all sorts of different figure lines. And of course, you guys know that used to I reviewed all sorts of different Mezco figures. And even though they've not had a major release in a little while that's necessarily thrilled me enough to film a review, there is other companies that are now stepping up and getting into that game themselves. And I'm talking about that premium 12th scale market, which I love so much. In particular, I'm talking about Hiya toys. Now, with Hiya, they have been doing some excellent 3 3/4 scale figures over the last few years, and it seems like that they're just becoming more and more of a force to be reckoned with in the toy collecting world, especially with their Godzilla stuff. I've not bought any of it. I do have one of their Robocops. They've always been very impressive in that arena, but now they have expanded into the 12th scale stuff with the Exquisite Super Series. Now this, of course, is kind of meant to be a comparable kind of series to what Mezco does with their 1/12 collective line. And this is from one of my favorite movies of all time, not even close, First Blood. Now, First Blood, of course, is the story of John Rambo, who is a Vietnam veteran that is extremely troubled by some of the things that he witnessed and some of the things he had to do in the name of the American government. But when he travels the country by foot, trying to see one of his friends, things don't go well. It's an incredible story, and certainly a movie that everyone should watch at least once. And although a few of the sequels weren't exactly what they should have been, it's a series that I have continually loved for many, many years now. First Blood, of course, is still the very finest Rambo film of them all, in my humble opinion. So I'm always interested in new products that celebrate that particular movie, and here we have a figure that does just that very thing. But before we go any further, please keep in mind that you should subscribe to the channel. Check out all of our new videos and content that we have coming out all the time. And of course, be sure to like the video and comment down below. Let me know what you think about this guy. Hiya did not send me this review sample or anything like that. I bought this with my own money. With all that out of the way, let's begin. So, of course, Rambo here came in packaging, but it's probably the least exciting element of this release. I mean, honestly, it's just a gigantic box that says Rambo First Blood, and it has a little bit of like a barcode and some copyright information, and this is a slip cover, and under it it's just this big box and the lid lifts off and the figure's in a plastic clamshell. But honestly, there's really not much to say about the box. There's certainly no kind of special artwork on it or anything to help set it apart from any other product you would see. So that's kind of a shame because as you can tell probably already just by looking at this, the actual product that you're getting inside the box is anything but run-of-the-mill or ordinary. So let's talk about what we're seeing here. First of all, it is important that we establish scale. Of course, this is a 12th scale figure, meaning it is right at about 6 inches tall. However, I think we all know that that has become a very loose kind of scale because it can be all sorts of different things these days. So it's very important that we establish exactly what kind of 6-inch scale that Rambo here is in. John Rambo here is in what I would like to call the more true to 6-inch scale. And that's things like the Ghostbusters Plasma series and G.I. Joe Classified, Star Wars Black series, those kinds of lines that are at that slightly kind of smaller 6-inch scale that's a little closer to the actual 6-inch measurement. There are other lines that are considered to be 6 inches, but tend to skew larger. As you can see, we have Hunter here from Star Wars The Bad Batch, and this guy very much feels like the analogous of Rambo in the Star Wars universe. So all of these guys work really well together. However, bring in something like Dutch Schaefer, like a NECA figure in the 7-inch scale, and he's going to dwarf Rambo here. At the same time, you can bring in something like Mattel's Masters of the Universe Masterverse figures, which are like at 7.5 inch or so. And yeah, it's going to leave Rambo in the dust. John Rambo comes with a total of 3 different head sculpts, and the first one we'll look at in great detail is the standard head. Now this is more of the kind of, neutral expression that you'll see him in, especially through the beginning of the movie, when he's being outright harassed by the local police department as he's just passing through. I think that this is an incredible likeness here. I've seen, Stallone, I've seen attempts to capture his likeness again and again, in the toy industry at all sorts of different scales, whether that was 6th scale or a 12th scale or 3 3/4 scale. But this is a really incredible effort. As a matter of fact, it amazes me how it can look better than a whole lot of like the 6th scale efforts, like the 12-inch efforts. So I think it's pretty incredible what Hiya has been able to accomplish here. This makes a very strong case for a bid for supremacy for them, and certainly kind of a line in the sand towards Mezco or any other company that's trying to pull off these likenesses at this scale. Whatever that Hiya has going on in terms of paint and sculpt, however they're accomplishing it, whether it's more of a digital thing, I'm not really sure. But one thing is for certain, and that's that they're no joke. This is Stallone from First Blood all day. And I was talking to Brandon, the other guy who's on the channel sometimes, earlier about this, and he pointed out how that Stallone looks very, very specific at this point in his life in First Blood. He has a very particular look, and truly they've managed to capture that look, no problem whatsoever. They've got the nose just right, the facial hair, especially the hair. I think it's very important that you kind of give it a pomp a little bit, and sometimes you don't see that when people are trying to capture this particular likeness, and they've gotten it just right. So I am very, very impressed by that. Not only is the head sculpt impressive, but the actual tassels here that they've embedded into the head are very impressive as well, because it's part of the bandana, yet they've done something really cool and they have it like coming out of the head sculpt. So you have this, soft goods element that really takes it to the next level. Now there's no wire in it or anything, because I think that would compromise how the bandana actually looks, how the head wrap looks. But instead you can kind of mess with it and get it to do different things, like it's blowing. So I think there's plenty of those possibilities as you go through with it. But I was just really impressed by that implementation. Come around to the back and you can see more impressive detail going on the actual hair, and lots of subtle paint work too, as it picks up those kind of light browns and shiny little highlights as it goes. You're going to see me as we go through the review. Something that I like to do is switch head sculpts as we talk about different things. So we'll keep this one on for just a little while so you can get a good idea of what it looks like. Moving on down, you're going to see us kind of put this figure in different modes as we go as well. But for now, I just want to talk about his tunic that he's wearing. Of course, Rambo makes this when he's on the run in the woods from the cops, and it's made out of like a scrap of material he finds in a rope so that he can have something to protect himself from the elements. And I definitely wanted to show it to you how it came out of the box. I've not removed it yet because I knew that it would involve at least partially untying this, and I wasn't sure I could get it back exactly the same way. So I definitely wanted you to see it stock like this. Now, I think they've done a great job of implementing this tunic because it really doesn't look oversized or anything in the movie. It's kind of ill-fitting in a way. It definitely looks very ramshackle in the film, and they've captured that here. And you can see some very subtle shading and just some very subtle stain work has gone into it. At the bottom, they have this mud detail. This carries through to the back, and you can see that it's actually two pieces of fabric being held together by this rope. So I am very impressed by their attention to detail that they've captured the film with. The one thing I'll say about it is that sometimes if you don't have it posed appropriately, the sleeve can flare out like this just a little, but that's more of an extreme case. Instead, what I like to do is kind of bunch it slightly and put it under the arm, and it tends to make it look a lot nicer. I like to do that on both just to make the fit a little bit more natural. Truly, it's a really, really nice looking ensemble, and the subtle stitching right here is really good too. Moving on down, you have his blue jeans, which we'll be able to see better later as we take this off, but they have some great like mud and dirt and grime details on them, and I think they look really good. Down here, we'll look at the boots. These are actually a very soft rubber down here, and that means that he has full ankle posability, which we'll talk about more with articulation. Now, as far as I know, the only other time this look for John Rambo has been captured in action figure form was by NECA many years ago, and they released a very impressive figure of Rambo in his tunic. I've always thought this was one of the best Stallone likenesses that you could get in action figure form. Definitely very strong compared to other things that we'd seen before from many other companies. However, it's interesting. I do think now, looking at it, Compared to Hiya's effort, this seems a little more caricature-esque than, say, this, which seems more true to life for the film. It's still a really good likeness, and I still think that it has some very subtle paint work, and it's very impressive. I especially like seeing the sculpted version of the Tunic and how they're able to bring in, you know, all kinds of bends and folds and paint work, things you couldn't do with soft goods. So it's still impressive in its own way, and it has the big battle damage stuff going on the arm, which is something that, you know, is not replicated with the Hiya version. Interestingly, they really go different routes on what color his blue jeans are, so this one's a lot more acid wash. And later, when we take the Tunic off, we'll look at the other NECA figure from First Blood. Just so you know, we'll look at articulation a lot more later, but this Tunic doesn't inhibit the articulation at all. You can have him do whatever crazy stuff you want to do. It's very important to me that John be able to hold his radio, especially when he's in this outfit, and he's having the scene by the campfire where he's talking to Troutman. And the posability is such that you can easily, you know, put the radio right to his mouth if you want to, so that you can replicate a lot of those shots from the movie. So I thought that was nice. And one last thing I wanted to show before we move on from this outfit, you can see that it does include the spear from the movie that he fashions, where he's able to wrap his knife around the end of it. This is accomplished with having a separate spear piece, like a giant stick, and then there's this plastic piece that one side hooks onto the spear, and then it has a spot for you to insert Rambo's knife. So I think that that looks terrific with this outfit. And why not add a flame effect from one of my Masters of the Universe figures so you can see what that looks like as well. There's a lot of great possibilities with this. I will show you how the other head sculpt looks. This is the kind of, you know, halfway angry, kind of, you know, peeved off fighting mode Rambo head sculpt, where he's not in full berserker mode. And whether you're having Rambo hunt a wild boar, you definitely can't go wrong with this awesome head sculpt as well. And it really does capture kind of Stallone's sort of snarl that he does. I'm especially impressed by the tiny little teeth. It's about as close as I can get with my camera before the zoom craps out, but you can definitely see what I'm talking about. They still maintain that soft goods bandana there. The hair still looks great. I'm telling you, they've nailed Stallone's likeness completely, especially the jawline. Really good work. All right, so let's definitely go ahead and remove the Tunic. And without completely untying it, you can see that I can work it down. And that way, when I'm ready to put it back on, I can simply just pull this straight through. And then it comes off in two pieces. And here we go. We have the body of First Blood Rambo from the end and beginnings of the movie. And although at the beginning of the movie, John Rambo does not have the bandana tied around his head just yet, you can still kind of simulate what that looks like at the beginning with the motorcycle chase and all that, just by putting the bandana back a little bit. So in your photography, it should still look pretty good. I really love how this looks. I think that looking at the actual, you know, body itself and the arms, of course, I think they're using the same body throughout all three of their Rambo releases that they're doing. First Blood Part 2, and Rambo 3. But the interesting thing is that Stallone got progressively more ripped through those movies. So you kind of have to acknowledge that Stallone wasn't quite this buff for that first movie. But it is still close enough, I think, to where you wouldn't mind it at all. I think it still looks plenty accurate enough. Like I said, not quite that buff, not quite that big just yet in his career, but it's certainly, I think it's certainly close enough to the physique that he had. I was certainly worried about that when I first saw pictures, but it wasn't until I got him in hand that I realized it's really kind of a non-issue. But we all know that Rambo looks a little different than this for the end of the movie, so let me change him up here. Well, they certainly give you quite a few options, because we know that near the end of the movie, Rambo has the kind of bandoliers of bullets, the ammo belts kind of crisscrossed around his chest. You get two smaller ones, but you also get two big ones. And here's John Rambo fully kitted up with his massive machine gun, heavy artillery, and his crazy screaming head sculpt. At this point in the movie, he has the battle damage with the blood going down the side there. I think this is another really strong likeness, a really great Stallone likeness here. It looks great from all angles, and I think that it really is reminiscent of when Rambo is shouting "Nothing's over" at the end of the movie. They've gotten it just right once again. Unfortunately, the biggest problem I've had with the figure so far has been the pants. They're just slightly loose around the waist, and you know, of course you can tighten the belt, and I'll be doing that. But in kind of, I think, just a freak thing, one of the belt loops just came off. I actually didn't even struggle with it. It just kind of, I don't even think it was ever sewn on to begin with, or if it was, the stitch never really took in the factory. I think this is just like a little freak thing. We'll just, you know, take the pants and add a little stitch up there, and I think it'll be fine to the top of the loop, or I can put a tiny little dab of glue or something. It'll be like it never happened. Still kind of weird though. So I'm just assuming that's just mine and that's not a major issue. But of course, tell me down below if you had something similar happen with yours. I mean, when you can get like shots like that, it's very posable when you look at his arms and you know how everything works right there. So that's really the look that I like best when it comes to First Blood. I think that's completely iconic. I don't even think there's a more iconic, you know, action hero look in the 80s, aside from like RoboCop or something, than Stallone looking like this at the end of the movie. So I'm very, very impressed. I'll show you a comparison between this and the NECA release. I did actually customize this NECA release a little because I didn't think the face paint looked very good at all. So I went in and added my own kind of black highlights to it. I might have went a little crazy with his 5 o'clock shadow and things, and some of the highlights around the eyes to bring out the Stallone likeness. But I always thought that it turned out pretty good. And as you can see, the big difference is the color of the pants here. Very different interpretation going. But I think that it looks very comparable to NECA's. I think NECA is going for something really different. But I will say Hiya does win in terms of likeness. Now, I will say that this head, the bandana is a little crazier, and it's a little harder for me to kind of temp it down a little bit to keep it from going so nuts. But I guess that's in keeping with how frazzled everything is at this point in the movie anyway. So, I mean, it makes sense. For articulation, it's definitely something that we should discuss, especially since this is a new line and everything. I'll go ahead and show you with the arms. You actually get quite a bit of range with the shoulder there. It does go up and down, and there's a little bit of a butterfly action. You can see that there's kind of a rubber overlay for the chest. Some reviewers have went ahead and, you know, taken the shirt off and things. I don't really feel like that's necessary because that's not really like a big action look in the movie, so I'm not going to be doing that. You can bring the arm all the way around, and it works just fine. You can swivel at the top of the bicep. There's a great double joint right there. And here we do have some wrist swivel, and it can also hinge up and down. At the actual chest, you can see that there is some movement that clicks, that locks into place, but it's not anything too extreme. At the neck, there's kind of a ball joint on the inside of the rubber overlay, and there's a ball joint at the top, I think, and it allows you to get some really good range. At the waist, we do have a swivel side to side, and it can go all the way around, so you get a lot more range that way. Down here at the legs, I don't believe I feel any kind of drop down hip, but instead you get a really good kick, so I don't think any kind of drop down is needed. You do get a thigh swivel at the top. He can do the splits. Now you can see though that once again the quality control on the pants strikes. Mine, you can see the stitching is kind of got a hole going there. So again, I would just have to go in and add a little stitch to this. But it's still really unfortunate that the quality control just on the jeans was lacking when everything else was right on target. You can see that there is a double jointed knee right there, and then down at the bottom there is a swivel right above the foot, and there is a really good hinge, and because the boot right here is rubber, even though it's all one solid piece, it allows all of that to work and lock into place. There's also a swivel so that you can get ankle rocker pivot, and he can hit some really deep poses, and he can handle those with pretty much relative ease, as you can see. It's worth noting there's a few goodies I really couldn't get to in great detail in the review. Here we have more of the regular machine gun with a removable cartridge and a soft goods strap. Here we have another gun with a scope, so that one looks good as well. And he does include a long ammo belt to actually feed into the heavy machine gun, as well as a shorter one. And I'm never going to be the guy to bore you to tears showing you all the different hands. Here they are. He pretty much has hands for everything. The only thing I'm disappointed about is with the fisted hands, they look a little small on him. Other than that, he does come with this accessory bag that has the Hiya logo on there. I do like that there's a little hole up here that that allows it not to catch all kinds of air inside. However, I do worry about smaller accessories. I don't think there's anything it comes with that could fit through it, but still. He also comes with a black base stand that actually has room in it to put the accessories. The top of it looks like this with the Rambo logo, and there's a hole that allows you to put a posing cradle there. And although you probably won't necessarily have Rambo doing a bunch of high-flying poses unless you're having him jump like he does in the wilderness in that classic part of the film, you can see that you're able to remove sections and shorten this down as needed. Alright, so final thoughts on First Blood Rambo here. I really do think that they've done a great job overall. However, I would say that I am very cautiously optimistic about Hiya's entry into this market. The thing about it is that when all these companies are trying to replicate 1/6 scale detail and a 1/12 scale figure, it leads to some growing pains. In this particular case, it's definitely the pants. Whether it was, the belt loop coming off or the stitching not being quite complete on the inseam. These are things that I can pretty easily fix, but I probably shouldn't have to, if you catch my drift. Of course, this isn't a cheap figure by any means, but I do think that the price is just about right. For this kind of product nowadays, we're looking at right around the $100 mark. Thankfully, this guy didn't quite get there. He's at $89.99. And I think for that, he's a fairly decent value. He comes with 3 different heads, all sorts of accessories, and some really good soft goods clothing, even if the pants are a little subpar. Other than that, I do think that you get quite a bit for your money and a pretty nice display stand that we really didn't have time to go into here. Other than that, there's really no complaints about the Stallone likeness itself, which is incredibly impressive. But overall, I am really satisfied with the figure, even if I have to correct a few little things on the jeans. Do I think that this is a Mezco killer? I'm not sure about a Mezco killer, but this is really, really stout competition for them. And I think that they're really going to have to step it up to respond to this. Mezco has a hard time with actor likenesses a lot of the times. They did not here. They have a hard time with value sometimes. They didn't have a hard time with that here. I think both companies have a little to work on in terms of the quality control aspects, but honestly, most of them do these days. Either way, let me know down below in the comments what you think about this guy and if you picked him up or if you plan to. I had a good experience with mine, other than the pants. That was irritating. And of course, we should think about what Hiya should do next. Naturally, they have shown off the 3 Rambos, and you can pre-order those guys. I got mine at Big Bad Toy Store here. But I think that the one that I would really like to see is for the 4th Rambo movie, where Stallone is a little older and bulkier and is wearing the black shirt. That's my dream figure that Hiya should make, and I would certainly love to see that. I can only hope that these are successful enough so that they can get a figure out of that. I could care less about Last Blood, a movie I absolutely hated. But yes, I would certainly love to see a Rambo 4 figure. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment down below. And God bless you and yours. And I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.